Welcome to another episode of God Yay or Nay. I'm here with my man Chris Griffin, comedian, and my good friend. Chris, thanks for joining me, brother.
What's up, Noor? Good to be here, man.
Hey, man, I'm happy to have you on board. So you just went for a fucking Ayahuasca journey to Peru. This is a place you went to. It's a place I went to in my first time too. So I was so happy to hear that you wanted to get on board. We're going to have a cool story because I haven't heard your story yet. I wanted to save it for the podcast, so I want to hear all about it. We're probably going to just get talking and loving and all that shit like we always do, but before we do that, let my audience know who you are, maybe a little bit about yourself, anything that you think is something that they should know about you.
Yeah, I'm a comedian. I think you started a little bit before me, but we've known each other, 10 years in the scene, Canada, just touring around. So do stand-up comedy. Previous to that, I did some writing stuff. So, definitely into the arts and whatnot. And, touring comic.
And actually, before you were in the arts, you fucking were like some high-paid, like financial dude, weren't you? And then wasn't that like a life that you ended up like leaving because it was just, it was just not you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I didn't need ayahuasca to blow all that up. So yeah, I think before comedy, I worked for a publishing company and I kind of started my own business in copyright and permissions, like just doing the legal contracts around publishing. As we say, publish an anthology of poetry, you need permission to publish all those things and contracts. So I kind of started my own business in that, and University Toronto Press, higher education was like my main thing. So I handled theirs, and then had a house out in the suburbs. But I was like 26, and I was like, man, this is so boring. So I found comedy a little bit later, I think when I was 30 or something like that. And I was like, this is the thing I love. Like, this is, because I would write before, and that was great. And I went on tour with Tucker Max and way back in the day and did all this kind of crazy stuff throughout the whole United States. And I kind of saw that side of life where I'm like, oh, you can like just have fun and cool things happen. So I came back to Canada and started comedy shortly after that, I was like, this is just what I want to do, because writing was great and you could express yourself, but the feedback was slow. Like you'd work for a year on a piece or months, and then maybe you put it on the internet, you get some comments or an email. But comedy is instant, right? You tell the joke and people are like, that sucks, and you're like, all right, and then you go back and work on it. And the next day they laugh. So I just was like in love with comedy right away. So yeah, I kind of went to work shortly after starting comedy. Gave them a ton of notice, like 6 months, but I was just like, I'm going to stop doing all this stuff. And kind of just closed my laptop one day and didn't open it forever again. I think that laptop, but just stopped doing everything. Man. Yeah, sold the house, toured the country, lost all my money, but what a time.
Yeah. And honestly, though, I like that because you did chase something that you really wanted to. And I remember when we first started out, you always used to tell people, follow your heart. I
still do that.
You still do that. And that's always been like the Chris Griffin we all know. And it's true because that's what you've done. And I can tell it's brought you happiness. It's brought you to a good place. It's brought you to Sophia, your wife. You're doing well, and you have a good job right now, and you get to do comedy. Like you found that balance, and honestly, that's something I've always respected from you, and like that's what my podcast is kind of about, is finding that fulfillment in life. So
yeah,
you're a perfect dude for that. I do want to ask. So now you wanted to try ayahuasca. Now, where was that? Where did that come from? Just the want to desire to try it.
Yeah, I think like way back in the day too. I remember when I was I've always been into psychedelics or in that. I've always had great experiences in that sense, and religiously too. Like I went to a Catholic school in grade 7, and just because it was closer when I moved to Calgary. And they're like, my mom's like, oh, you're baptized, but then we didn't go to church too much or anything. And then I was just fully like immersed in this crazy, religious thing. And so I read the Bible front to back, literally, like every night I would read it. Yeah, and I won like the religion award in grade 7.
What?
Yeah.
Just for the audience to know, this is not anything I would expect Chris Griffin to be telling me. Winning the religious award.
Yeah, I was just like, because it was crazy. Because like my first till I don't know how old you are in grade 7th grade, like 13 or something like that. So my whole life before that, I was like confused, and then I go and they're like, oh no, God's the answer to everything. I'm like, oh sweet, this is awesome. And then kind of went in, but then as like I tried to like get into the church, and the Catholic Church, there's all these rules, and they're like, no, you can't do that, you have to. And I was like, why is this, like, I'm excited. And I was like a really nice kid. Like, I was a really genuine, sweet child. So I'm like, there's no other ulterior motives other than, like, excitement. And then they're like, no, you got to do this. And it was like this really negative kind of vibe. So then I kind of went, took me a long time because I, like, post high school, like, you know, pretty atheist route where I was like, oh, there's nothing, like, you know.
That's where I met you, I think. You're in the middle of your atheist phase.
Yeah, so I just didn't give a shit. But then I was like, I still believed in, like, a goodness in the world. And I always had, like, I'm like, I think there's some energies or spirituality of that, like, you know, out there. So then, and I remember the first time trying mushrooms when I was like 17, I couldn't believe it. It was like, we paid $20 for, I think, 4 grams. And me and my friend were in my parents' basement. And we took a gram each and waited, you know, the typical thing, like an hour and a half, and be like, oh, we got ripped off. Like, might as well take the rest of it. And then literally an hour later, we're like flying through we're like, holy shit, like in space, and the thing has turned into a tree. So I couldn't, and I was like, man, for $20, that, like, I literally went to like another world, laughed so much. I was like, that's the best experience I've ever had in my life. So then I tried to, but then I was like, can I have more mushrooms from the person that was like, I was working night shift, and they're like, nope, that was it till next year. So then I just started researching and growing my own, and then like I got hella into that. But I wouldn't do them that much. I would only do them. I read somewhere early on, like, don't do it more than 11 times a year, which was a weird number, but it's less than once a month. So I'd kind of be like every 5 weeks. I'd be like, okay, now if I feel like doing them, I'll do them. But always had amazing, like, positive experience with that. So then following that, I can't remember when I first read about ayahuasca, but I was like, this sounds incredible, and, you know, it sounds sort of a next level psychedelics. I've, you know, tried acid, had a good time on that, but ayahuasca seemed to have that whole spiritual element that maybe was missing from the other ones, or wasn't as pronounced. So I remember years ago, I was looking into it, and you can get the plant, like the vine and the leaves, like, you can buy them in Canada. So I was like, oh, I'll make my own. But then I was Googling it, and like the purging, and I just imagined myself like laying on the bathroom floor, shitting my pants, like dying. And I was like, okay, maybe I won't make my own. And then, yeah, people started doing it. Like I know you went. I don't know if you were the first person I know that went, but I know Carrie Younger went.
Yeah, Carrie went first, and I went to the same place Carrie went, and then you went to the same place I went. So like we all went from Carrie going there the first time. So that's and like where we went to in the jungle, like you'll explain in a bit. I don't know if I could have went there just by myself, not knowing somebody who went there beforehand, because you're going fucking off the grid in another country in the fucking jungle in the Amazon.
Yeah,
it's fucking a little much.
Yeah, dude, it was wild. And that's the same thing, too, where I looked at a whole bunch of places, and it's kind of annoying how touristy some of them have gotten, where it's like, oh, yeah, we got like a gym, a spa, like Wi-Fi, and, you know, 200 people at a time. And I was like, that's not what I want.
You don't want any of those, anything to do with that.
Yeah.
You want, and like the other thing is, you were saying like this was like, ayahuasca has that spirituality to it. It's like the next step. And while it might be a little bit different than mushrooms, but I think mushrooms can definitely have that spirituality, but it's bringing the ceremony to it. Mm-hmm. You have to bring a ceremony and intention. And like with ayahuasca, we go into it weeks before we even take it, where we're changing the way our habits, we're cutting out bad stuff in our body, we're really cleansing our body and fasting before we go and do ayahuasca. This gives it so much more ceremony, so much more spirituality with it. And you can bring that to mushrooms too, but you have to like, it's not doing mushrooms and going for a hike, it's doing mushrooms in the darkness and fucking going inside yourself and bringing like intention and fucking discipline into that ceremony, and you can get the exact kind of same spirituality with it. But it's true, you're talking about a place where they're fucking having Wi-Fi. Fuck that. I know. Well, you're supposed to be off your phone the whole time because you wanna really not bring any kind of outer habits or outer thought processes, the outside world's thought processes into your head. It's so fucking bad for you.
Yeah, and it's hard to even let that go because I have the day job, so I was like, oh, if I go to a place with Wi-Fi, I can at least check in on emails once a day. And then at some point, I'm like, dude, the world can go without you like 1 week. Because I used to have a joke about that. Like, if you died, like, it takes them like 3 days to, like, they'll figure out there'll just be another you in your place. I'm like, it's not good.
Yeah, that's actually,
so like 1 week if I prepare for it. So I went off and I did a ton of research, read stuff, but the place you recommended, I looked into that and I was like, man, this is exactly what I want. Because I think you'd said, Percy, you know, And he told me too that the shaman there, he tries to limit it to 8, and he's like 12 max. I think he's do 15 if there's a super demand. But it's like that kind of intimate. We don't need more than that kind of thing going on. So yeah, I just kind of narrowed in on that, and I tried to go pre-COVID, and then ended up getting married, and then so I was like, okay, we'll do the marriage first, and then when I met my wife, the first thing I said to her, I was like, okay, 2 stipulations, like not like, but I was just like 2 things about me. I'm like, 1, I do comedy, so, you can't guilt me if I go on the road or, like, cause it's hard enough to do comedy. And of course she was like, no, I would never do that. She's a comic too, and she's an actress. So she's like, if I got to go shoot for 3 months, I'm like, yeah, I would never be like, no, don't do that. So she's like 100% on board. And then the second one, I was like, and I'm going to go do ayahuasca at some point, as soon as I can. So you can't say no to that. And then she's like, okay. And I was like, by myself in the jungle. I think at first she was like, I'll come along and maybe just not do the ayahuasca or something on the retreat, but I think it was good to go by myself, because I heard with shamans, even if you go with your wife, they'll like put you on separate sides of the ceremonial thing, and they want you apart.
Yeah, and then because like ayahuasca can be tough sometimes.
Yeah, man.
And when you're hearing somebody else having a tough trip, especially if that's your wife, you might be sitting there going like, oh, I want to help her out, when it's like, nah, you got to be paying attention to your own trip right now.
Yeah.
Like the shamans are there to help out if somebody's having a rough trip and they need to help them out.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very kind of like individual thing, but then also, my wife was in my visions and all, like, so it's also that part of it too. So she was totally cool with it. I mean, I think she was kind of like, okay, and the kind of deciding where I'm like, no, I'm doing the one where I'm gone, like I'm just off the grid 1 week, that's it. So yeah, narrowed in, sounded good, and the one thing too that I liked with, if people are listening and thinking about it, is the price for that one was good too, because there's some, like I think it was $600 US for the ceremony, for 3 ceremonies for the week, but other ones were like $2,000 US, like there's some for $3,000 US.
Oh
yeah, plus you got to pay the flight down there, so it doesn't seem at all like Percy's doing anything other than for the healing aspect of it, like, and the costs all go back into the
and I think that you have to kind of understand that with ayahuasca, it's touristy, and there's a money industry around it now, so people are 100% always going to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And yes, people with a lot of money, they're going to go there, and it's going to be kind of like their own little resort where they do ayahuasca at, which like you'll probably still get some benefits, but it's it is kind of a little weird. Like the place we went to, you were just there more recently, so why don't you kind of describe the whole journey of getting down there and what the place is like?
Yeah, so I went in, so I read a little bit, but I also didn't want to read too much on people's experiences, because I didn't want it to kind of color my journey, but then also at the same time, as I read stuff, people kind of said, whatever you go in expecting, you can go with your intentions, but Mother Ayahuasca or the ayahuasca itself will show you something probably different, or will, it'll have a different plan. So I kind of just went in, I mean, even I was going to give you a call before, just be like, okay, what can I expect? But I'm like, that might be fun just to, go in a little bit blind and figure out what it is. So I had no idea really what I was walking into. So I flew down there. I think when I got to Lima, I flew to Lima, and then you go Lima to Iquitos.
And yeah, Iquitos is like northern Peru, right at the beginning. Like this is the start of the Amazon.
Yeah, the tip of the Amazon. So then I flew into Lima. Everything was going great for the flight, as good as it can. And then I went and got to my gate for Iquitos, and I was going to do all my goodbye texts just in case I couldn't get Wi-Fi or reception in Iquitos. So because there was supposed to be a cab waiting there for me, so I just was going to text everyone. But then I get this WhatsApp text, and it's just a picture of my big bag, like on the floor somewhere with Spanish and question marks. And I was like, oh man, what is this? So then I run to it's like an hour and 20 minutes before my flight. So I run to the information guy. I'm like, do you speak English? So yeah, like, no, instantly you're in Lima, not much English happening. Yeah. And he was like, yes. And I was like, what does this say? And he's like, oh, your bag is a baggage thing. You're supposed to pick it up. And I was like, oh man, they told me when I got on the plane that it would be at my final destination. But I think you're supposed, I don't know if something got messed up. So then he's like, yeah, you're not allowed to leave security once you're in. And I was like, I got to try. So I went and talked to some guy, police guy, security guy, and he showed me a piece of paper, and it's like a $30 fee. And then I had to sign something to leave security, and I go back in, run over to arrivals, run to the baggage area. They won't let me back in where the bags are. But the guy's like, you got to go talk to LATAM, the airline. So talk to LATAM. They're like, no, you got to go talk to baggage people. So I go over there, and nobody's speaking English. It's like broken English at best, and I'm kind of showing them the message and just pointing at my bag and saying, I need this. And then, because I brought swimming trunks and a tank top I had a little backpack, so I would have had something to wear, but I wanted to wear the same thing every day. And I was like, man, all my toothbrush, I was like, this is gonna suck if I don't get this bag. And I'm sure they would bring it to Iquitos, but then like, how am I gonna get it? I'm in the jungle, with no reception. I'm not gonna find this bag. So I like go to the baggage place. They're like, no, you gotta go to customs. I go to customs. Like, you gotta go back to LATAM. So now I'm in a circle. I've talked to everyone. I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna do? And then I'm walking and I just see this Spanish dude pulling a cart of bags, like going up an elevator. And I run up to him and I showed him the message. I was like, my bag. And then he like kind of looks at his cart and it was on there. And, and I'm like, man, can I take this? And I showed him my ID. I'm like, I'm the same person. And he's like, yeah, go ahead. So I grab that bag, like run back, throw it find some special baggage guy. And it was like, he's like, oh, it's an hour cutoff. And it was like an hour and 3 minutes. He's like, yeah, let's get it on. And he looked at the tag. He's like, this should have just went to Iquitos. It's already got the tags on it. So he throws it on. Then I try to go back through security. They're like, you have to go talk to this other thing, pay this fine. And I get back through, get a new boarding pass, get on my flight. So then I was like kind of amped up on the stress. But man, I got my bag, land in Iquitos. There's a dude with because I was like, oh, there's no sign. My name's Chris Griffin. And there was just a guy with a sign that said, I can't remember, I think it was like CGIN. Yeah, CRGIN or like CGIN. And I was like, that's close enough, probably me. And then he's like, speak English or speak Spanish, and I was like, nope. So that was just like a quiet ride out. But you realize Iquitos is like a third world country, But I read some history on it that it was like it kind of boomed with the rubber trade, decades ago, then died out, and then now it's booming again with ayahuasca and tourism. But it was an immediate kind of culture shock where you're like, oh yeah, this is like, this is.
And it also got hit hard with COVID.
Yeah. And
okay, let me just tell you, which is crazy.
Yeah.
The exact same thing happened to me when I went to Iquitos. My fucking flight out of Calgary originally got delayed, and because of that, everything got delayed. And when I went into Iquitos, my bag wasn't there.
Oh man!
And like I didn't get the bag until the last flight coming from Lima to Iquitos, the day before I was gonna drive out to see Percy. So, like, the day before, the last flight that was coming in, they were like, all right, well, this is the flight. Like, if this bag's on it, it's on it. Are you, like, not going to have your bag going? And I was thinking the exact same shit you were. Like, fuck, I'm not going to have, like, I'm going to the jungle. I'm not going to have any change of clothes, any of my fucking, like, stuff that I packed, like, even toothbrush or any of that shit, right?
Yeah.
And, like, I'm on the last flight, I got it, and I was like, fuck. And it was just, like, such a relief. And, like, I was amped, too. I'm like, all right, let's do some ayahuasca now.
Yeah, I know. I was like, man, and just making that happen to get the bag. And, and I didn't stay in Iquitos. Like, I was basically cabs there to take me to the jungle, and that's it. So if it wasn't there, I don't know if I'd say to the cab, like, hey, come back in the next flight and I'll just sit here. I don't know what you do, right? But thankfully I had it. Throw that in the cab, and then you drive out and you're like, whoa, man, we're going like into the jungle. And I didn't get time really to do my goodbye texts or whatever. So I turned on like data roaming, which cost me like $40, but just to say to my wife, like, hey, I'm at this place. I'm going into the jungle. Everything looks great so far. So yeah, we pull up after about a 45-minute drive. And then he's like, somebody will walk you up. So I put on my huge ass backpack, which I brought way too much stuff. And then, it's like a 40-minute hike or 40-minute hike to the place, right, from the road. So then, you kind of go off reception. And I was walking up that and kind of my nerves are like, I'm on high alert. Everything's new. And I see a guy walking. He's got like no teeth and a machete, just like a, little dude. And I'm like, oh, what the hell is this? Like, like, what am I going into? Because I got, like a laptop in my backpack, and I'm like, well, is this safe? And just like all these thoughts. And I kind of go into the retreat area, or like the resort and Percy wasn't there because I went in a day early, because you can come in the Sunday and just chill, and they'll still feed you and you can sleep. And then the first ceremony is the Monday. So it was just me. The whole resort was empty except for the family that cooks and some of the builders. And so I go in, they give me a meal, I just pass out because it was late, it was getting late, and then they wake me up at 8 a.m. for breakfast on the Monday, and then I kind of go for a walk around the resort. I meet Percy and his wife Genesis, who's super cool too, and he kind of introduces me to her, and they ask like, what are your intentions? But Percy speaks very minimal English. Genesis doesn't speak it at all, so they're like, what? And I was kind of like, oh, I don't know really, like I'm just coming here to, but generally for my intentions when I was going for myself, I think I was just, one, I was going in with not too much because I wanted to see what it showed me, but just generally like, get clearer on my direction in life, be a better person, just work on being better comedy, those type of things, be a good husband, all those kind of things, but pretty general. And then, so they kind of understand what I was saying, but I didn't go into too much detail. And Genesis had kind of a little translator app on her phone, so she would translate just words. Like if Percy said something, didn't know the word. So he kind of explains how it's going. He says, you won't eat dinner tonight, and then we'll do the first ceremony. In the first ceremony, I won't give you a full dose. It's kind of just an introductory dose to ease you into it. And I'm like, okay, I kind of want to be like, man, let's just get right into it. But I'm like, all right, let's see how it goes. So, and then I go back and then I see like, and I'm, even when I got in the hut, I'm like, should I hide my laptop? Like, cause it's, it locks and there's like screens so bugs can't get in. But other than that, like, somebody if they really wanted to could get in. But then that second day I kind of had some time to relax and I'm walking around and everyone's so nice. And I bathed in the river bath and we did the first flower ceremony where Percy kind of, you concentrate on your intentions and he like blows smoke and pours water on top of your head and we did all that. But then when I was walking around just the area too, I saw the guy with the machete and he's just like a nice guy bringing back bamboo or some tree to do some work. And I'm like, oh, how lame am I with like my prejudices that I'm like, oh, this guy's a murderer in the jungle. And everyone's like so nice. I mean, this place is pretty safe. Like people have their stuff. Like nobody's going to come.
Well, you're in the middle of you're in the middle of nowhere. So it is kind of weird for somebody you can't even get a vehicle out there. If someone comes and steals your shit and they're just like, all right, I'm going to run for 45 minutes on
a straight path where everyone's going to see you. Be like, hey, there's that guy. Yeah, so I was kind of like disappointed myself, but it was eye-opening where I'm like, oh, you got to get rid of all these like, dumb thoughts where, bringing your own shit into the jungle. So I kind of really was like, all right, man, let loose, you're safe. Like everyone's nice, Percy's here. And then when we get to the retreat too, for that ceremony, Percy kind of said, usually there's a lot of people, but it was just myself. And then a guy named Juan from Cuba who runs a meditation studio out there. I think it's Om Meditación, and he was awesome, but he didn't speak English either, even less than Percy. But he was out there, and he's Percy's friend, so he'd been there a few times, and he always comes through, I think, once a year or twice a year. He'd just been there a few months before. But even though he didn't speak English, and it was just the two of us, that's it. He was like, there's going to be you two for this week. He's like, some other people might come later, but so then it was awesome because I kind of just mimed everything he did, and he was like a very earnest. He was like 60th with like a gray ponytail, but he was very earnest in everything he did. So then I took it serious too. I'm like, oh, you're out here, like think of your intentions. I did all the ceremonies because I could imagine myself in my 20s being like, well, this is dumb, or like having those thoughts. But I was like, just do it for real, concentrate on everything. And Juan was, even though we couldn't understand each other, we would kind of act things out, or we start using emojis on our phone to be like, oh, I saw a chicken, and show a picture of a chicken. He's like, oh yeah. So we were kind of teaching each other words we could understand. So it was pretty fun. Like he was the sweetest guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like my experience there. Ate the meals. I was pretty nervous the first day, and then he's like, okay, let's do it. Like we'll do the ceremony. Was this similar for your experience the first time you went? Like.
In what way? Like I had like 8 or 9 people there.
Okay.
And I think because one thing it's COVID, I think that's kind of killing the numbers.
Yeah.
And I wonder what the time of year. I went in January. You went in early September or late. Yeah. So yeah, that's I had a bunch of people. So it was like, and there was a bunch of people who spoke English. So and one of the ladies who was preparing to be like a plant medicine teacher, so she had like maybe 12 years in ayahuasca experiences.
Awesome.
And she's probably done it like hundreds of times. So she spoke English, she was European, and like she explained so much shit to us. So like that was kind of cool having that. But like, yeah, you having like a one-on-one ceremony is that's kind of fucked, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, the language barrier was the biggest struggle throughout the whole time, and where I kind of did wish, like, oh man, Percy would kind of give ceremonies and he would say stuff in Spanish to Juan, who I'm sure is pretty familiar with the whole thing. He's been a few times, but then Percy would translate to English and give me some idea of what we were talking about, and he knew some important words where he was like, your intentions, and he's like, it's important to be tranquil, relax, and I was like, all right. So I go in the first ceremony. It's just they put the beds right in the center of the ceremonial hut thing, like instead of around the edges, we were like right in the middle, and it's Percy and Genesis, the shamanita, and Percy had said before, he said, oh, my wife, she actually she can see the spirits without needing to take the ayahuasca. She's sensitive to that, which is funny because my wife, her mom, is the same. Like she lives in kind of the forests of New Zealand, but she's got that ability too. Which is really interesting, and people, fly from all around the world to visit her and do that. So she can kind of read people's energies. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. And we kind of lay back, and I think I was like, okay, let's just get into this, and felt positive, like, excited, but also, a bit nervous. And then so I drink the thing, and Percy's like, yeah, there'll be an opportunity to drink more if you want. And I just lean back, and within 20 minutes, Percy starts doing his thing, singing, and things start moving, get a little bit of visuals. And then I lean back and kind of close my eyes, and then I can see, Mother Ayahuasca. She kind of was this figure far away a little bit, and she's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna look tonight. Like I'm just gonna see."
Is that what she said?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
it was like she's
crazy.
like, "I'm just gonna see how it is," and I was kind of like, "Okay." And then in my neck, which Juan and Percy kind of explained to me through translator apps later on, like I guess it's like your fifth chakra. I could see that opening up with like light coming out, and then these spirits started like going in, like looking around inside of me. It was almost like that. They were like kind of, some looked like geckos, and other ones were, and people kept trying to give me gifts and stuff, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I should take this, like pills and potions, and I was like, are they trying to drug me? Like I was like really weird, and then it kind of just went through my thought process, and a lot of times it would turn negative, where I'm like, oh, who are these people? What are they doing to me? And it would kind of color but I became very conscious of those thoughts, where I'm like, oh, this is weird. And then if I started thinking more positive, I was like, oh, thanks for the gifts, it's nice to be here. And then my experience would almost get a little bit better. And Percy came around after probably a couple hours, and I was just mostly going through like my thoughts and my thought processes, but it wasn't a crazy trip. Like I wasn't out of my mind or whatever. And I he's like, do you want some more? Have you had some visions? I'm like, yeah, I'll take some more. So I drink some more, and then but pretty even for the rest of it. And at some point he's like, oh, the ceremony's over. And then I get up, and I was like, oh man, did I do it wrong? Like, was I not like open enough? Like, why didn't I have like a crazy experience? And then Juan's like, okay, Chris, let's go. And kind of walks out. So we walk up to the end of the wooden bridge, and then I got to go left up to my hut, and he's got to go straight down to his, which we're a little distance apart. So he's like, okay, we'll see you in the morning for breakfast. And I turned to him, and he's just like this beam of light. And I was like, whoa, I'm like, Juan is like a god in this world or something. He's got it all figured out. And I heard him say to Percy, it was like a beautiful experience. And so I'm like, man, he had a great time. Like, I've got some shit to do. And then it's just completely dark. I have like my little flashlight, LED flashlight, and it's just, I'm running back to my hut, and everywhere I look is like, and the birds, they make hilarious noises too, like a witch's laugh or something. It's like, ha ha ha, and I'm like, I'll see like a mermaid, but that's like on the land, like right over there, and then I look over there, and it's like a tree, it's like, ha, like talking to me. I'm like, holy shit. So I'm like running, get in my hut, like jump under the covers. I'm like, wow, okay. And then I kind of had some time to think about it, and I was like, all right, that was a good, and then and at one point too, I was gonna do the purge. Like I felt like I was gonna purge during the ceremony, and I was like, no, I don't, because I don't get sick. Like even if I get blackout drunk and I gotta like, I just don't puke ever. So I was like, oh, I don't think I can puke. And then Mother Ayahuasca, she's like, you're not going to today, but next ceremony, you're for sure. And I was like, okay, next one. Today can we not? So I could feel stuff kind of building up, and they showed like my negative thoughts, and it sort of manifested as like this almost like little gremlin thing that was like on my brain, and I felt like I had a block like kind of on that brain. And I think that was the first ceremonial point of it, is being like, oh, your negative thoughts will affect your experience and will, not allow you to open up as much as you could. So, and that could be a metaphor for life as well. Like, if you're just, stuck under your own negative thoughts, like, you'd enjoy life a lot less. So that was kind of the first day. And then, we wake up in the morning, and he's like, oh, Cambo ceremony, let's go do that. So that's the poisonous frog. So I still got the 3 scars.
Oh, that's what Cambo is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because I never did that one.
Yeah, I think it was like optional, like when I read on the website, but and then also happened to be Percy's birthday that Tuesday, so he's in like great spirits. So we do the Cambo thing, and he's like, yeah, drink 2 liters of water. But he told me the night before, so I chugged this 2 liters of water. I'm up at 5 or 6. I kind of had like a decent sleep, but pretty crazy because of the ayahuasca. So the ceremony's at 7. So then and then you do the rape too. So we did that the Monday as well.
What's the rape?
It's where he blows the powder up your nose. Did you
do that? I never did that one either.
Okay.
So this is a cool thing, because like you having only 2 people, I think this is what gets you to have like all these extra things added onto it. Because like with 8 people, we never did any of these.
Okay, yeah, the rape was crazy too. So I didn't know what it was. And the Monday I sat down, and he pulls out this wooden pipe that's like, a single hole on one end and then 2 holes on the other end, and he puts them up into your nostril, and then it's like blows a powder. So I'm like, okay, does this do I breathe in? Like, am I supposed to breathe this powder in? And he was like, no, don't do that. He's like, hold your breath. So I watch Juan do it, and Juan's like, so phlegmy. He's like, wah, poof, like spitting. I'm like, man, what is this guy doing? Like, but then it was hilarious that I see him on the Monday during the day as like this, like, phlegmy, like, wah, like just guy, and then he's like a golden god by like the ceremony. So that was funny how I kind of judged him that way. And then so I kind of watch him, and then he just keeps like spitting after, and so I lean back and do the sit up, and he's like, okay, we're gonna do it, and then he says some kind of prayer or whatever, and then blows the rape into you, and it's insane. It's like you just feel it go up your sinuses, and then it just fires your whole brain like down your spine, like it just like your whole brain front to back like just lights it up. So I think it's to open the chakras. So I loved it on the Monday, and I was like, wow. And then we do the Cambo Tuesday morning, and he's like, he burns your arm, like lights a.
And so tell people what it is. It's like a poison, like it's a poison out of a frog, but this is like they do it to like help you purge and clean your body. That's what it's supposed to be, right?
I believe so, yeah. And I couldn't really understand what it was for. Later, he translated it, but yeah, I think it's great after an ayahuasca ceremony to do that, to kind of purge your body, your thoughts, and then bring some tranquility. So they take a rod or something, light it, and then just burn a little hole like in your arms, like, and then they put the poison in there right after, and you can just feel it like kind of spread into your body. And then he's like, yeah, you should go lay down. So I just lay down in the wood by the river, and then my face gets really hot, and then I felt like I was gonna puke. Like I was like, oh, I feel sick. And he's like, yeah, it's only 10-20 minutes, and kind of relax. I had some like mild visuals, and the first time, it was like, okay, so I think, we did. Then I just started feeling great, and I was like, okay, I'm fine again. But I was like, I wonder what the point of that was, because I didn't fully understand at the time. But then after, I was like exhausted, so it did help me sleep amazing. Like then we ate breakfast, and it kind of gave me this pretty chill vibe for the rest of Tuesday. So I get it in that sense. And then we did the rape after the Cambo, and we did one. It kind of lights up my brain, and then Juan's like, I'll do a second one. And he's like, do you want to do one? And I'm like, yeah, why not? And everyone's like, yeah. So Juan does the second one. The second one I accidentally did breathe in, like as they're blowing it up my nose, and it just like burning down, like being pepper sprayed, burning down my throat. Yeah, and then so like I was just standing there, and then because I drank thankfully 2 liters of water, I just started like puking from that into the trees, and then they're all laughing, Percy and but they thought it was because like from the Cambo, but it was like I wasn't sick from that. I felt sick from that, but then I felt perfectly fine. But I was because I couldn't tell them like I breathed in this freaking thing wrong. So then we eat, and I talk to Juan some more, And the Tuesday night, I powered through some books on like meditation, which I'd never read about. So I'm like, I got to probably quiet my thoughts and be more present and everything for this next ceremony. Because I'm like, I want to get into it. And it's going to be a full dose. So I meditated at night. I really thought about my experience. But the next day when I woke up, my experience was much more positive in my mind. I was like, oh yeah, there were some cool moments there. Like Mother Ayahuasca is for real a thing. Like, I saw her, but I'm like, but then was I envisioning that? Like, am I just pushing it and trying to make it up? And I had a moment where I'm like, I spent this money for nothing to come out here, and it's like not going to have an effect on me. But then I was like, stop thinking like that, man. Like, get ready for your second one. So the second day, wake up Wednesday, breakfast, lunch, do the ceremonies, rapé, didn't do Cambo on the Wednesday. And now I'm like ready to go into it. I'm like, okay, this is feeling positive. We all get back in the hut and do the whole, they sage it and clear it of things the shamanita does. And then right when we get to the point where we're supposed to drink it, and again, it's just me and Juan, the shamanita goes out to the door and then comes in and just like, oh, somebody's here to see you, to Percy. So he's like, you got to go out there. So Percy's like, sorry, this is really strange. So now I'm like, well, what's happening? Like, who's here? Like, who found this in the middle of the jungle? That's unexpected guests. So I'm kind of freaking out. And the shamanita comes and sits right beside me. And she has her translator app. So she's like, how are you feeling? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm feeling good. Like, excited to do this ceremony. And then I was like, who are those people? And then she's like, haha, are you scared? And I was like, kind of. But I'm like, who are they? Like, and then she's like, oh, I think they're visitors that want to do a ceremony. She's like, they won't do it tonight. So Percy has to talk to them. And then I was like, oh, any advice for me on this trip? And she's like, no advice. She's like, just be open. She's like, I can sense already the best work in your life is in front of you. Like, you're going to have a great time. So now I'm pumped. I'm like, okay, cool. And then, Juan's there and I know him now. So I'm comfortable with Juan already. And then I lay back, wait for Percy comes back in. He's like, yeah, people want to do the ceremony. So they're going to stay tonight, not do it tonight. And then they'll be there tomorrow and we'll do the ceremony with them Friday. It was a father-son from Romania. All right, cool. So in the meantime, we lay back or do the dose, lay back, and 20 minutes in, it like things really start moving. Like Percy had this new guitar song, and the day before on the Tuesday on his birthday, he kind of sang. Like it's really cool that he travels the world and finds these songs or writes them himself. And then so he's like, yeah, I'm learning this song. His guitar was new for him. As soon as he starts playing the guitar, it's like beautiful. The whole ceiling starts dancing, and I can kind of see these like Aztec. I don't know how to explain it, but just like visuals, like kind of pulsing through all the beams, and I'm like, oh man, here we go. Like this didn't happen last time to this extent. And I lean back, and then kind of the negative thoughts start happening again, and I really can see them now. I can visualize them as like this kind of creature in my brain, and it's sort of separating it out, where it's like, oh, this is your brain without these thoughts, and it's like super positive, like this is amazing. And then I can feel like the purge thing happening. I start getting like sick, and I'm like, but I don't feel sick, but I can just feel like something's got to come out. That I'm gonna like puke, and I'm like, whoa, man, like I don't like this. And Mother Ayahuasca is like, hello, like, okay, this is happening. So she's like, all this negative thoughts, and it's like, yeah, get that out. And it almost is like going to the music that Percy's playing, like he's building it up, and I'm like, oh man. And then you have the little bucket beside you, and it's just, it's a bed with a bucket. I brought my little flashlight, brought a little water bottle, and that's and a blanket, and that's all you got there. So I'm like, I don't want to puke in the bucket in front of everyone. So all of a sudden it's like, whoa, like I'm just like heaving. So I run up, and they've got 5 toilets out the back that you can use in their own little enclosures. So I run into one of those just in time, open the lid, and I'm like, what? But nothing comes out. Like I don't puke. Physically, nothing came out, but spiritually, it was just like, whoa, like spiritually, I know that exact thing. Yeah, and it was like, I was like, whoa, and I just like, it was like the negativity and the little like negativity gremlin, like it's like I expelled it back to the beginning of time. Like it was like where, like the Big Bang, like if the universe went all, and they're like, throw it that far back, and it's like, it'll always come back, try to come back, but let's get rid of it for today. And I was like, boom, and instantly from like feeling sick, and it's at one point I was kind of cold and shaking and weird too, like I just felt pure bliss. Like I felt incredible. And then I go back and I kind of lay down, and now I feel like warm and amazing. And poor Juan's like, he's kind of struggling with something, so he's like burping and farting, and I'm like, man, I want to be like, Juan, let it go, dude. Like, come on this side of things, because this is amazing. And then so I lean back, close my eyes, and this is the part where it feels like weird talking about it, but I'm just gonna be honest, and people could think I'm insane. I don't know. But then Mother Ayahuasca's like, welcome to the world, Chris. Like, we've been waiting for you. And I was like, oh man. And she's like, come on, and I'll show you it. And then so there's kind of like this animals or like these human doggish things or something. Everyone's giving me gifts. I'm meeting all these people. And it's sort of like Vegas and Dubai, like lights, incredible, like beauty. Is like, it was wild, like all these like crazy sort of Aztec-ish structures. And we're just going through and going higher and higher, and then we kind of get to the top of, I don't even know what, like, I don't know what we were going up, a pyramid or something weird, but we were pyramid shaped kind of thing. And then we get to the top, and I just see Mother Ayahuasca kind of turns into the sky, and I see like the eye with the triangle, and then she's like, Chris, you've come here, like you did all the work, you took this serious, because before I went out, I, you know, cut out, as we talked about caffeine 6 months before, I cut out booze 2 months, you know, didn't touch that. And I mostly did, my wife thankfully does a plant diet for the most part anyway, like we'll eat meat once or twice a week, but so I was already kind of doing the diet, but I went and stuck with that as much as I could. So, but then Mother Ayahuasca showed me all these times in my life where it's like, you always make the difficult decision, like you'll always take the harder way, which is good because, you know, it's difficult at first, but you learn more from it. And she's like, so you're ready, I'm going to give you all of my powers and all of the, you know, the light I have and welcome you into this world, but you have to use it for good. You have to promise to do that. And I was like, yes, of course. And then they're like, because you are a person of the light. So then like the eye just kind of like my third eye, I guess where like your sixth chakra is, kind of opens up, and then it just goes like into my head, like, and I just see everything. It was like so fast. It was just like, I just saw so much of like human history, but also like nature and like the stars and the planets. It's like, but I like just like insane. Like it was overwhelming. And then it kind of stopped, and then she's like, okay, I'm with you now. I'll always be with you. You're welcome in this world. And she's like, yeah, she's just like, you're a good force in this world. And then she's like, you have to be your biggest fan, and you have to like, it's all these kind of positivity, like people pumping me up. I'm like, oh no, this is too much. And she's like giving me this golden armor as like a knight. And I was like, no, this is like overkill. And she's like, no, you deserve this. Like you work hard for it. So then I'm just like in this amazing place, and she's so kind, and everyone's awesome. And we kind of, you know, the ceremony goes on. There's a lot of things, and kind of it was very dictated, sort of the path, and just showing me all this stuff, and everything's happening. And then I kind of sit up at the end of this. Percy's like, oh, that's the end of the ceremony, and he comes over at some point and does like a thing over you with palms and smoke and everything, and it's insane. I can't even describe what it's like because the sounds and the feeling of it.
And like, so like, I'll let you know, like when these shamans, the way they use sound, like, and music, they look at you and they see patterns and they see energies and they see when something's out of whack. So when they use sound, it's to like interfere with your sound to make your patterns more in line, so that you're more in line, that you're more you're more healed. That's all of this is like, that's why you're saying this guy's a guy who wants healing. So like he sees where he can give you healing, he can bring you to like the most positive place you can be brought to, and he uses sounds, he uses voice and light and all of that stuff to like help you with that. And that part was wild too, and the way the ceremony kind of, you know, helps it along. And he explained it too, where he's like, oh, I just invite the spirits, and he's like, it's different every time. But he's like, when I first started, because just to fast forward a bit ahead, the two Romanians, the father son that came the last day, they both happened to speak English and Spanish. So then the son was great. He was in his mid-20s, Gabriel. He translated Percy's ceremonies, but Percy explained when he first started. I think he started, you know, he took his ayahuasca his first time at 14 or something, and his grandfather, he lived out in the woods for 30 days or in the jungle, so he really was immersed in it very young. But when he started doing ceremonies, at the first part, he, you know, he'd give the ayahuasca, and there'd be multiple people there, and he'd say, you know, how was it? And people would say, oh, I didn't see too much. And he was like, I just wasn't tapping in as much to invite all the spirits and to kind of open up that world so they can have the best experience possible. But then I think his second son was born blind,
and he was sitting with his son one day. Or his son was sitting on the ground one day, and he's like, Dad, I wish I could watch TV. I can't see the TV. And Percy kind of waved his hand way above the son's head, and the son was like, why are you doing that? And Percy's like, oh, but you can see using your other senses. And then for Percy, he was like, that was the moment I realized that's what I have to do during these ceremonies, is help people see with their other senses and bring these spirits here. So whatever, maybe it was because it was his birthday, but whatever he was doing this night was killing it. Like, it was the best. All these amazing spirits were there. And like for me, with that message where they're like, you have to be confident and, be proud of yourself, but be your biggest fan. And I'm like, yeah, but it's still important to be humble. I'm like arguing with, the spirits. Yeah, and I don't know if I think Mother Ayahuasca is like, because they say it's like kind of a very feminine type god and all this, but I don't know if she is gendered or if it's, it was cool in my vision she was, but I think it's just that's God or the energies or the life force in the world, however you want to define her, and it could be different for everyone, but in mine it was kind of this very female presence that I was talking with. So so she kind of gives me all those things, and I sit up after, but then instead of like the night before where like, oh, the ceremony's over, we just all, Percy pulls a mat up and Genesis, and I'm like, oh, we're just hanging out for a bit. So Percy's talking to Juan. Juan's okay. It seemed like he didn't quite get that purge out, so I don't know what he was fighting against. I wish I could have asked him. And then Genesis comes, the Shamanita comes, sits right beside me, and she was like, how was it? And I was like, oh, it was, with the translator app, so I'm typing, and it's so hard to see because everything, I'm still tripping, so I'm like, took me forever just to write, but I'm like, oh, it was incredible. I met Mother Ayahuasca. She was so nice. And then Genesis got super excited. She's like, I knew it. And then she's texting me back being like, yes, I could see that. And do you care to explain how it was or how you're feeling? And I'm like, oh, yeah. And I just told her, I was like, she was like expecting me and was like, we're so happy to have you. And she said she'd give me all her powers. But I feel weird, like kind of arrogant saying that, or maybe I'm like schizophrenic and insane, and I don't know. But say that, and she's like, I knew it. She's like, I saw that, and then she shows me a picture, and she's like, did you see this? And it was like the third eye or the eye of providence symbol, and I was like, that's exactly what I saw. And then I just point at that. I'm like, that, and I was like, Mother Ayahuasca, and I point to like my forehead. I'm like, put it in, and she was like, yes, I saw that, and she's like, I could see it, and she's like, I've been waiting for you to come here for a long time. Like, she's like, you're meant for this, and she's like, you're gonna do so much great in the world. So I was like, this is incredible. Like, it's like fans. And so it was the best. And then Juan, we walk out, and he's like, oh, look at the sky, and the stars are all like dancing, and that the bird that like laughs, like ha 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 ha. I was go doing that, and it's like whoop, all these crazy sounds. And there's like really bright star, and then Mother Ayahuasca's like, oh, and this one's you, don't? And I'm like, okay, like, thank you, but and then I walk back, feel great, but then I'm like, get in the hut, then I right away go in the bathroom, come out, and I'm like, okay, and I'd had everything set up this time so I could kind of chill, so I light my candle, got my bed set up, and I'm like, okay, maybe go back out and venture, because it was the same thing when I was walking back to the hut, like all these visions or like little hallucinations, like the trees, but I was more comfortable this time, and I was in like a great headspace. So I'm like, oh, everything's good, and then I'm like, oh, I should brush my teeth before I go back out there. So I get my toothbrush out, and then I would just spit the whatever water into the toilet, because you just have the hut, for people who don't know, it's just a bed and a little hut. It's a decent sized hut, and then but there's a bed, and then there's a toilet, and the toilet's in kind of its own little room, but there's no door on it. There's just like a tiny curtain at head height, and that's it. So even if you were sitting on the toilet and someone came in the hut, you'd be in plain view. So I go, and then you have a big bucket of water and a little bucket that's empty, and you scoop the big water, the little bucket in the big water, and then dump that little bucket into the toilet, and that's how you flush the toilet. There's no running water or anything like that. So go back in the bathroom, brush my teeth, and then there's like this scorpion hanging from the curtain, like right at face height, and I don't even know how. I'm like, what is this thing? Like, what the? And I'm like shining my little LED flashlight. It's not that powerful. I'm like, man, am I hallucinating this? Is this a decoration on the curtain? So I go get my candle, and I'm going closer to it, and the scorpion's going like beyond 3D. Like its stingers like whoa, like it's like when you watch a 3D movie in the theaters and it's coming at you. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, am I tripping? And then I go close and I'm doing different angles, and then I'm like, no, there's just really a scorpion here. Like, this is insane. And earlier in the day, I'd seen like a big kind of tarantula, like a furry spider thing walking around in my hut. And then I was like, whoa. But then this is when I was sober, but I was like, oh, you know, maybe it's a friendly spider. So I was trying to like mentally be like, hey, welcome to my hut. You know, kill any mosquitoes if you see them. You know, trying to be in good things. So that Mother Ayahuasca, I'm like still talking to her, like she's in my head, but I'm like, what is this? And then she's like, yeah, you know, he's here to protect you. And I was like, okay, could you make him less scary? And then she's like, this, you know, life isn't always going to be easy, and you know, you can't judge things just because of how they look or anything like that. So I was like, okay, hello, Mr. Scorpion, like, welcome to my hut. I'm very terrified of you. And then I just stood there for like an hour just staring at this thing, and I videotaped it to make sure, like, and then watched the video back. Like, nope, it's really there. So then I went, and I just could picture myself getting, like, it just crawling over to me while I'm sleeping and stinging me, and then I'm just dead in the woods. So I slept like under the mosquito net, which is over top of the bed. And they give you like a pretty warm blanket, so I slept with the blanket fully over my head, like tucked it all around me. In like, I think it was 26 degrees at night, so just pouring sweat, and I like fell asleep eventually. Woke up a few times through the night, and I think at like 3 a.m. I woke up and got my flashlight, and it was gone, and I was just like, okay. And I was way more chilled, and I was, you know, like the anxiety was all gone, and I'm just like, all right, man, whatever. So I slept a couple more hours. Then we do the ceremony that morning. So I'm like, this is the best. Like, I feel I have like a new purpose in life. And we talked about this a little bit before the podcast, where you know, it didn't shape my vision too much of anything I want to do in life. Like, you know, it's like but it just kind of reinforced the work I'd done. So we were saying, you know, maybe if you're in a bad relationship, ayahuasca could be that thing that gives you the push to be like, hey, get out, and you would see that. But I think if your foundations are pretty solid, it would just kind of realign like my strategy. And when we talk about like in life, but we talk about the alignment too, the first smoke ceremony and bath ceremony I did with Percy, when he had the kind of cigar thing, it like bent the ashes, like that had burnt was bent really far to the right. And he was like, oh, like you're misaligned on your chakras. So he's like, the rapé and all these things will get you back. So after the Thursday morning, we did the ceremony. He's like, oh, you're perfectly aligned now. And Genesis was super cool. She was like, you know, talking to me, and she kind of came and found me, and we used the translator app. And I was just like, oh, that's really good. Like, I don't know what to do for this next ceremony. If I left that day, I would have been like, that was the best. Like, I don't need anything else. Pump me up. But I knew there was this other ceremony. So then we go to Thursday. Now there's the Romanian guy and his son, and the Romanian guy, he was really nice and kind of talked about some stuff, and then and it was nice that he spoke English. I'm like, I don't even remember how to speak English. Like, it felt weird. I was like, oh. So then Percy did some things and told some more stories and kind of his history. And they said he went to like a big shaman conference internationally, and he was the youngest shaman there, and they didn't want to let him speak, but his friend vouched for him pretty hard. And then he spoke, and then everyone was like really wowed by his story and by all his knowledge and everything relating to being a shaman, to the extent that at the end of the first day, or after all the speeches, the group gets to pick which shaman they want to lead their experience. And I think out of the 120 people there, 36 picked Percy. They're like, we want to do Percy's one. So then he was kind of, you know, elevated, and everyone's, you know, showing him love. So it just brought, you know, a lot of confidence that you're like, oh, this guy really cares what he's doing, and you know, he really does want the healing, and I was finally able to ask him some questions through Gabriel, the young kid, was translating for us. So again, we did the Cambo Thursday morning, and that time Juan's like, well, I don't feel too good, and he's puking. So, you know, it was funny that, you know, that happened to me the first day, even though it was the rapé thing. We do rapé ceremonies, and I think Percy's doing a whole bunch of extra stuff. I don't know if just because it was his birthday or because Juan was his friend. So we did that, and the father's son, the Romanian, the father seemed to not be taking it quite as serious, but the son was like really, you know, earnest about it too. So we ate meals together, and then the Friday, and then I showed Genesis the scorpion. I was like, man, look at this thing, and she's like, it's just a baby one. I was like, what the hell? But she wasn't scared of that at all. But then when I showed her the spider, she was like, oh, that's scary. And I was like, oh, cool, the one I'm not scared of, is the one I should be scared of. So then Friday we all get ready for the ceremony. River baths, the whole thing. I think the Romanian guy, like, he showed up and he was wearing this little silly hat, the dad, and he's way more talkative now, like making jokes like in the afternoon, and I get to smell booze. I'm like, oh, this guy's had some drinks. Like,
the Romanian guy?
Yeah, the dad.
Shit.
I think so. Like, I was like, I could smell booze on him, and I'm like, man, that's hilarious. But then I was worried. I'm like, I wonder what kind of a trip this guy's gonna have if he's not going in like, purely whatever. But then I'm like, oh, I wish him a good trip. It's not my place to understand how he's gonna go. And also, I know they're going to get, like, the lower dose. Like, Percy had said that. He's going to ease them in. So it was a bit abrupt at first because Juan and I had such good vibes, and it was so tranquil and peaceful. And, like, he's such a kind soul. He was really patient. He showed me how to meditate and all this stuff because he runs that meditation school. And he's like, you got to find your mantra. So I guess that's next in my life. But then Friday it's the ceremony. So now they put us on the 4 beds, but we're all back around the outer edges of the hall, and does everything. And both the father son took the ceremony part very serious, so it was like good vibes going in. But I was like, I wonder what this one's going to be about, because I was hoping, I'm like, man, if it's back to the good times, because they were also on the Wednesday one, the second ceremony, Mother Ayahuasca. She's like, you're an ambassador of good times. She's like, what you do in comedy, she's like, you bring joy to the world. Like, it's a beautiful thing. And she's like, you know how to do that. So she's like, keep bringing joy and more, like, be this ambassador of happiness and love and all this. So I was like, I can't wait to go back into this place. So we drink the ayahuasca, lay back, and then 20 minutes in, and then right away, like, the negative thoughts start coming again. And it's like, I'm like, oh yeah, I got to go through this again and purge it. But now the thoughts are so intense. Like, it's so kind of like, oh man, you're the worst, and it just wouldn't stop. It felt like hours and hours, and after about an hour I'm trying to work through it, and I can see the thoughts, and it would be something in my, like, say, like my wife, I'd just think about her and be like, oh, does she really love you? Like, would you can't talk to her now, maybe she'd be having an affair. Like, it was all these, like, terrible thoughts, and then it would get to the point where, like, I can't even take it anymore, and then it would be like, or think about it positively, like, she loves and supports you, she can't wait for you to come home. And then I would just, my vision would kind of go brighter. And I think it was just sort of demonstrating that dichotomy of, like, this is how life, the same thing in life can be viewed, like, very differently if you're just being super negative about it but I kept doing it, and I was, like, shaking. I was so cold. And I was like, oh man, I'm like, I can't wait to purge and get this thing out. But they're like, this isn't going to be like yesterday. Like, this is deep. You have to, like, these insecurities you have to get this out. So I'd go back down deep into, like, my stomach kind of thing almost, or in my brain, and think about, like, think about these negative thoughts. Where do they originate from? And it showed me, like, times in my childhood, because I grew up at, like, really rough schools, and, like, I moved a lot, so you'd be new to school. People would be like, hey, come sit at our table, and you're like, oh yeah, thanks, man. And then you realize it'd be like a prank, like, you'd sit in mayonnaise, and then you'd be like, you just done that didn't happen to me, but probably something similar to that. And it just would show me these times of people, like, reaching out an olive branch and then, like, stabbing me, like. And they were like, and I think I really was like a sweet kid. So I just, like, was really naive and like, hey, people are friendly. And then I'd fall for it every time. So, and that got kind of hardened as I, went later into life. But I still have this, like, extreme desire to protect people, like, from getting bullied, or I hate that. Like,
I've seen that in you too. I've actually remember seeing that.
Yeah, like, I'll, like, fight. Like, it's insane. It just makes me furious. So then, so it kind of was showing me all that. It was really difficult. And then the purging thing, Percy's playing the music, and I'm like, oh man, here it comes. So get up, run to the toilet, and then this time I actually do puke. Like, I can feel it come, like, took a couple minutes, and I'm like, well, not much, like, just like a tiny thing. And it was just like, like acid. And it's like, this is the negativity you got to get out. And then I felt a little bit better, went and laid down, but then it started again, like the negative thoughts. And it was just like everything in my life. And then I'm like, man, Genesis and Percy, sometimes they'll have a quick conversation, like, during the ceremony. He'll check in with her, and I just could imagine them being like, what's he doing? Like, he's screwing up this whole ceremony. None of us are having fun because this guy can't open his mind and his chakras, like the ones, like my fifth or my third eye, like my sixth chakra and the top of the head one, like, it was just, like, blocked from his negative thoughts. And I was like, oh man. And then it's like a deeper purging, and I'm like, okay, I got to go back. And then that second time I go to the bathroom, Genesis is just there holding the door for me, like, she knew I was gonna go. And I'm like, okay,
holy shit, yeah, she's so good.
So I, like, go back, and Juan's having a rough time too. I can hear him, like, burping, farting. I didn't have any of that. So I just go, and then I'm like, wow, like I can't get it out. It's like tied like so deep down into me, and I'm trying to make myself puke, but nothing's coming out, nothing's happening, and then it would kind of go away, and then it would like build to the music again, and I'd go deep down and be like, okay, get it out, and I'd like forcing it, trying so hard, wouldn't come out. Then I go lay back down, and I like again shivering, cold. I'm like, when will this end? And I lay back, going through all these processes, negative thoughts, self-doubt. And then I felt like I was going to puke again. I'm like, if I have to puke this time, I'm just going to grab this bucket. Like, I don't want to walk back again, because it's so hard to walk when you're like high and stuff. And then laid there, and then I just kind of had the conversation with Mother Ayahuasca, and she's like, look, you're in this world now. Like, you live here. I'm always with you. So she's like, this is your world, like, to do what you want with it. But and then she's like, but this negativity in you, it's like very deep rooted. So you're going to have to work to get this out. And I was like, yeah, I promise I will. And it's going to take a long time, and you have to be very conscious of when every time you have these thoughts to shut it down because it's part of you. And then I was like, okay. And I think also it's part of like that merging your shadow self with like your other self and all your ego and all those things, and trying to become this one complete person. Thinking about all that, I'm like, okay. And I'm like, now can we get onto the good part? And she's like, yeah, of course. And then came in, but it wasn't all like lights and like good times. It was like a very kind of, and I think I've done some reading after that the ayahuasca, the feminine world's like it's much more dark, and it's very more like intense in your feelings. So it kind of felt like we were underground this time, and everything, it was still beautiful. Like, it was like dark purples and stars, and sometimes Mother Ayahuasca would kind of be like a cat shaped thing too, and I talked to her, but then also she would be the universe. And then she kind of opened up again as the sky or the stars and everything, and then was like, okay, you're here now. And then I was feeling good again, and I was like, all right. And Juan's just like, having a rough time over there, and the Romanians seem fine. I didn't hear anything from them or notice them doing much. So I go back, and then Mother Ayahuasca was just like, okay, like, now you're here, you know what you have to work on. She's like, do you have any questions for me? And I was like, what? She's like, ask anything. So I was like, okay, like, what's the meaning to life? And then she would just show like just times in my life where I was like really happy, say like hanging out with friends, having a great time. She's like, it's these moments that are the meanings to life. Or like, times where you've been in love and you're like, truly happy. And it's like, you need to get as many of these moments as you can. You need to make life and for others too, like, spread this joy, like happiness. That's being kind. That's what it is. It's like, it's much easier to be mean and be evil, but it's a shorter, easier path, but there's no reward to it. And it's not, long-term and all this and enlightening. So I'm like, okay, cool. And then I remember at one point I was like, okay, what is true love? And then Juan's just like the biggest fart. Even where Mother Ayahuasca laughed, like all the spirits just started laughing so much. But I was like, that's one answer. But I was like that, and then it showed me like times you're happy, and that love is as much as you're giving into the relationship. It's not it's like two people coming together, not to be like double or twice as strong, but to be like infinitely strong, like pumping each other up, helping each other grow in every part of life. And then it was just like, she was like, I'll show you. And then just went from like my first relationship, and it was like my first kiss with my first girlfriend, Debbie, like, and I relived the whole relationship, like but like just bits of memories I didn't even remember I had, being like, we went here and went that. And then it was kind of like to where it went south, and it wasn't like, it just kind of got sad, but it was just like, oh, this is where you're growing apart, and this is why. And then I would be like, okay, goodbye to that girlfriend, and be like, oh, and your next one. And it was just like lined up for me, and I went through all of them where I was like, oh my God, like kind of things. And there was like some bad relationships, some great ones, and I got to my wife, and then showed her, and like she genuinely cares for you and all this stuff. And then at the end of all of that, Mother Ayahuasca, she's like, I was all of those girls, like I was all of them. And I was like, even the crazy one neighbor that tried to kill me? And she was like, yeah, I was her too. But she's like, because you went into that relationship you didn't have true intention. So it's always kind of a reflection and a manifestation, a relationship of what you're going into it with. So the ones you went into it, with true intentions and with love, were good relationships, and ones where, you weren't, or you were, doing other things, or you weren't fully invested, then, this is how it ends. And then, so, yeah, that was like really enlightening. It was just kind of like, put everything you can into a relationship, and then that will come out and you'll help the other person grow. And then, yeah, she was just kind of like, I'm in everything. So then I just laid there asking like more questions of life, and she answered every single one. And it would be crazy. I'd be like, what is this? And it would just be like, kind of go into like a new vision, and I would sit through all that. But the trip wasn't like quite as strong and like insane where it was like I was just kind of in the world, whereas the Wednesday one was like a ride. It was like a theme park where it's like we're going through like you're on like a train track of good times, and this one was much more like intense and deeper and kind of kind of feel my roots into the ground and like nature and all that and the animals and like the Wednesday this like little leaf bug thing I like was dying on my floor, so I like took it out to the thing and they showed me like how important life is, but this was like the Friday one was just like much more taught me about like death, but then death wasn't sad. It's just like something that happens and it's recycled back into the energies of life and it's all important. So then that ends, and then I remember too the Thursday I forgot to say we went for dinner and I forgot to bring my flashlight, so we had our dinner and it gets dark there at like 6:15. So then I was like, I don't have my flashlight, and Juan's like, I'll walk you back, and he had like a little wrist flashlight, so he takes it off his wrist and ties it around his forehead and turns it on, and I was like, after that first ceremony, it was just his forehead light. I was just a regular, I'm like, he's a golden god. It's just like his forehead light. So then I see Juan, he's still like, he was like a hella farting and burping, and then we like the ceremony ends, and Percy did the extra things and the leaf things, and I think the Genesis did a thing with like a almost like wind chimes kind of things, like around, and it just sounded insane. It was so cool. So then then after that, and then they didn't pull the mats up and be like, let's hang out. There's like ceremonies good. Breakfast is at 8. Thank you everyone, and like hugged everyone, or Genesis and Percy, and was like, thank you guys so much. And then I went back to like walk back to my hut, and the same hallucinations were happening, but now I was just perfectly calm. I was just like fine. So then I went back out, watched the stars. Went in and I just like laid in bed, and I think Juan had mentioned if you do yoga, like some intense stretches, you can prolong your high on ayahuasca. So I was like doing chin-ups on the rafters, and it's like and it was like came back in full force. So I just laid in bed asking like Mother Ayahuasca questions, and I was like, man, I don't want to leave here. Like I love this world. And then she's like, yeah, but you have to go back and you have to work on these things. And I felt like kind of like disappointed in myself that I couldn't purge those, like the fully get rid of the negativity. But then I kind of understood the day after that it was like, that's something that's going to be a lot of work and something to work on for next time, I guess. So there's part of me wants to go back right away, but the other part's like, hey man, now you know what you got to work on. Like,
and don't ever think about it like that, because like I've done it so many times now where I've had a couple trips where it was not very good, and you come out feeling like, oh fuck.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what ayahuasca will do to you. If you come back to it and you didn't learn from what they told you last time, it's gonna be like, hey buddy, fucking I gave you the answers last time, and you fucking know what you had to do, but you didn't do it. And fucking go and do it. And then you go and do it, and then you come back next time, and then it'll open your world a little bit more.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, now this is the next process. This is the next thing. But I love that. I love that it fucking showed you that, hey, some of this shit's deep down. I kind of had the same feeling, because how you said when you were purging that negative energy, that negative thoughts, it was like you're trying to throw it to the beginning of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to throw it as far as you can, because that is a big thing with ayahuasca that I felt like after you come out of it, you felt like you let go of so much negativity, or so much fear. For me, it was fear and anxiety that I let go of, but it will come back. And the whole process of whatever we're doing, whatever our spirituality is trying to gain more awareness of this over time, so that like we can see that negativity in real life and be able to see it right away, and hopefully bring awareness to it so it doesn't fucking take over our life. And when it comes back, we don't allow it to have the same power that it used to have.
Yeah, exactly. And I think and what you said too, because they say like all negativity, any bad thoughts, is usually the kernel of that is fear. Like it's something you're scared of. It's it's a fear of your own accomplishments or your own abilities or something. So now those thoughts, like say if in comedy, it's such a weird thing, because it's this amazing brotherhood, sisterhood, family thing with all these comics where you just, I can see you anywhere in the world, and we know what we've been through. We know the shitty gigs. We know how hard it is to go to strangers and be like, hey, I'm going to be funny. And, it's such a beautiful thing and a camaraderie among that. But then there's also the other part of it where it's like, fuck, how did this guy get this festival and I didn't get this shit? So, and I've got like nothing in common, a few things, but but I always felt like, hey, I've got a lot of time to do this. I've got to get better. I've got to develop as a full person and comedian. And I started later in life than a lot of people. So I never pushed myself too hard with that. But even those negative thoughts where, somebody got this, I'm like, good for them. Like, good for them. Like, it's great. Like, why do you have any negativity? Well, they don't deserve it. Why? Who cares? Like, it's an opportunity for everyone. Their parents are going to be super proud of them. Like,
and dude, I still fucking suffer from that once in a while. And like, once I do ayahuasca, I'm like good for a few months for sure. But you're right. Like, life and circumstances come back. And that's why you need some sort of spiritual ritual that you do every day or something like that. That's why meditation or whatever, like there's more than meditation, whatever kind of discipline that helps you kind of center yourself, because it allows you not to get swept up with that fucking negativity. And your phones, like for me, my phone, sometimes I just start looking at fucking social media or fucking whatever, and that gets my negativity flowing. And then that negativity goes into other things. And like, I need to fucking, that's something you need to watch. So like, man, you fucking, it's interesting, huh?
Yeah, and I think that thing too with the phone, like right before I went and did ayahuasca, or like a couple months before, I lost my phone, and I just didn't get one for a month, and it was amazing. Like, the anxiety of having to check it every 2 seconds. And I mean, I did have a lot of anxiety of like, oh, are people worried where I am? But I messaged a few people on Facebook and just said, hey, just so you know, I'm not dead. I've lost my phone. But I was just in no rush really to get one, because I kind of enjoyed that peace and that separation. And then obviously being on the ayahuasca retreat, being completely off the grid. I think it took 2 days for sort of that anxiety of like, oh God, does my wife think I'm dead and everything. And then
you just accept it. And
you
accept that you're fucking nowhere, and you're fucking, that's where you can get to such deep levels of silence in yourself.
Yeah.
It's so fucking like, it's so healing. That's actually one of the cool things about going to the fucking jungle to do it, and going to a place like that. And I couldn't imagine it with you, because you had no English speaking. It's like, with me, I was kind of like the one lady who knew so much about ayahuasca. I was constantly picking her brain about why do they do this, why do they do that, which was cool. You get to learn it. But with you, you probably fucking went even deeper into that introspection, just because you had no choice.
Yeah, and also the meditation, like I had no idea about any of that stuff, and I read a whole book on it that was out there, because I had the little bookshelf. I read 2, and then, then I started being like, okay, let's try to meditate. And just that process, the very basic part of it, concentrating on your breathing, being present, and letting your thoughts kind of flow through you to ideally where there are none. Man, how hard is that? Like, I can't even go 2 minutes. So I've been meditating every single day, and that's something 10 years ago I don't know if I would have the maturity where I'd be like, this is dumb. But now I'm like, man, do it. Like, how, like, it's a challenge to be like, get your mind where, because my thoughts are always spinning, and I've got 10,000 things going on in life. So I'm like, just quiet all that, and I think that's really sort of my next journey, or the next thing I do, and I'm eager to go back and do ayahuasca again, and wherever I go. I think the Genesis, or she just wrote me today being like, can't wait for you to come back, like on Instagram. So I feel like I really connected with them, and it was like an awesome experience. So I do want to go back there to do it, but it would be great if I went with, maybe there's some other English people there, that part of it too. But yeah, it's so cool to be like, okay, this is what I got to work on now. And that it is sort of healing. And when I was having the Wednesday trip, I was like, man, I'm going to take out all my money, and I'll pay for all my friends. I'll rent the whole place out and bring everyone, because I'm like, this person can have healing for this person can have healing. And then the Friday, I was like, oh, that was a really difficult one. I'm like, I wouldn't want people, or I would only want people to go through that when they're prepared and they're excited.
And that's like, when people ask me about doing ayahuasca, that's always the thing. It's like, fucking, if you're prepared, if you're ready, fuck yeah. Like, when you told me, I could tell, like, you were ready.
Yeah.
And, like, another person, like, reached out, and, like, after a while of talking with them, like, yep, you're ready. Like, fucking, I'll get you out there.
Yeah. And I said that to Percy when I left. I'm like, should I tell everybody about this, or should I tell just my friends or people? And he was like, he was like, tell everyone, because I'm very confident in my ability to heal. Like, I've just been doing this for so long. He's like, so now if people come up and they want to know about it, I'm happy to describe it. And I probably would encourage them, like, look, if you're already intrigued by it, or if that question's inside of you, do it. Like,
and if you're going to Peru, you're gonna fucking like take it seriously. If you're paying the money, you're paying good money to go there. You're taking a week off, like. I don't think, like, you'd have to be kind of stupid to do all of that and be like, oh, I'm just going to fucking drink my face off until, like, the day before ayahuasca. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just, like, it's kind of stupid to pay that kind of money and take it so not seriously.
It is, yeah. And even if you just did, like, there's a lot of local ones that I think are pretty legit popping up. I know there's one of the preeminent scholars on ayahuasca has a thing in kind of Maple Ridge near Vancouver. So those places exist. And even then, if you're, save you a lot of money or be cheaper, but still take it as serious. I do, and, like, I
do it in Canada a lot as well. But, yeah. And, like, hey, every time you do, like, I know, like, a lot of times when you do a few things of ayahuasca like you just did, sometimes you come out of it with something new.
Right.
And like with you, it seems like meditation was the thing. Like shit, you had some books there. Your whole thing was about questioning your thoughts and being very aware of your thoughts. So like this is showing you like a lot of times it's like you come out with a new skill or something that was like, all right, now fucking this is what you should be doing now afterwards. And like now it seems like you have like a new practice. And this practice is just going to help you grow more and more, and it's just something good for you. Keep it up, because I promise you, like, it's going to be something that's important for you in whatever your next stage of growth is. And if when you do ayahuasca again, which I bet you will, and it might, who knows if it's a year, who knows if it's 2 years, whatever happens, fucking this process, they'll be like, you started meditating and you kept meditating, and here's a new thing now, or here's a new direction or a new amount of awareness or openness that you can fucking use in life. And like honestly, the same thing happened with me. My last one, when I did my ceremonies out in Mexico, it showed me, like, it opened up, like, curiosity in me, and it, like, showed me, like, fucking start this podcast. Like, you've been talking about it, start it. Do it, and just keep doing it. And, like, since then, like, I've been doing it. I'm on episode, like, over 70 now. And fucking, even I've had so many hard times with it where, like, I'm just kind of like, oh, should I keep doing this? Like, and, like, in my head, I'm like, oh, it hasn't taken off as much as I wanted it to. But at the same time, it's like I actually know, like, just this whole discipline of constantly doing this has helped me out so much, just kind of discovering myself. And I know there's, like, an extra step in this with, like, I'm supposed to grow with this podcast.
Yeah.
Like, so it is one of those things when you get something from ayahuasca, fucking make sure you have the discipline to do it afterwards, because afterwards is when all the real work starts. And like a lot of shamans say that. It's like you do the ayahuasca trip, there's a lot of real work in the ceremonies because it can be fucking tough.
Yeah.
But afterwards is when the fucking real work starts. Like, are you going to actually change? Are you going to actually bring that change into your life?
Yeah, and that's when it's sort of on you, right? There's nobody else at that point. It's just you back in the world. And I did love, during my visions that, Mother Ayahuasca was there. And one thing I really struggled with recently too was kind of quitting drinking and just I'm 40. I still love, like, drinking is my favorite thing in the world. It's so fun. But I realized I was using it for a crutch for, like, social anxiety and to get myself into a place where I'm, like, comfortable in social situations. So even before, and even at the beginning of COVID, before I had my ayahuasca trip cemented in at all or anything like that, I did like sort of 3 months off there and just really, like, focused on the anxieties and the feelings that I was, killing with booze, to kind of allow me to have a good time. So doing comedy dead sober, which in 10 years of doing it, I'd really never done. I would always have a handful of shows, but I'd always have like a beer or two. And I think even just the beer with the comfort of that was enough. So it was, like, really hard at first. I was, I could see my hand shaking when I'm doing gestures. Like, my crowd work was brutal. Like, somebody would say something and I was like,
because I know what you're saying.
Because I wasn't present, I guess. And I'm sure like the times when you're fully killing in comedy, it's just you get in this weird kind of zen zone where you're fully present.
Yeah,
like, you're on that stage, you're crushing everything everyone says. It's like you already knew they were going to say it, and you come back and the laughter and everything, premises are getting laughs. Like, that level, and it's like, oh, you know, sometimes I can achieve that a lot of times with booze too, kind of artificially going up, where I'm like full confident, I'm gonna
100%.
crush. But to get into that without the booze and I'm, you know, it's only been 3 months on this little pathway, but I'm enjoying shows like way more. I'm excited to perform, and I don't need to be like, okay, I'll drink this beer here, I'll drink, because I don't want to get too drunk, but I want to get, you know, that 2-3 beer buzz. Like, it was just such a ordeal. And then if I'm doing a week of shows like I am right now, you know, that starts, this one's Monday to Saturday, by the Thursday, you know, just hangovers and drinking through that, and like, it's just, you know, it's affecting your performance.
It's 100%.
It's a block of that. Yeah, so I'm super excited for all these new things, but it is so challenging. It's like, it's nice to kind of have somebody in your corner that's like this spiritual thing, but it's also you in a weird way. You know,
it's
like,
fucking weird. I know, and you don't know what it is, because like, I know how when you're down in the jungles, they all say it's like, oh, it's the spirits in the spirit world, and like a part of you is like, oh man, maybe it's just in me, but like, you just don't know. Like, you fucking, when you're in there, you're like, yeah, these are some motherfucking spirits. I'm like, that was fucking spirits for sure.
Yeah, because I think I would even ask Mother Ayahuasca, I'm like, are you real? And she's like, what do you think?
Yeah,
like, yeah, you're real, dude.
Like, motherfucker, I just like healed you of your fucking negative thoughts. You're gonna ask me if I'm real?
It was, it's nuts. And then all the stuff too with like the shamanita and just her being able to show me exactly what I've seen, and then like on her phone this picture, and then I've Googled like so much since then trying to find that picture. First of all, like, I mean, I know that's a very common symbol and very common vision for people to have, more or less, but exactly how she showed it, I was like, man, that's just insane. And I can't not believe in that. I know a lot of skeptics and stuff are like, I want to see evidence. I was like, man, this is enough evidence for me. Like, either this is the most elaborate prank and sideshow, which I'm also fine then to believe in that if they're that good at tricking me. But
100%, man. Like, the skeptics, I completely understand the skepticism until you try it. Like, you're not like, when you try it and then you're still skeptical, then I'm like, all right, you tried it and you're skeptical, like, I will fucking give you that then. You're like, I'm completely cool with your skepticism. But like, I was skeptical, and then I fucking tried it, and I was like, ooh, like, ayahuasca made me a spiritual person, where it was like, spirituality is fucking very important. Like, that's what ayahuasca made me realize, that like, it has to kind of be something that's a part of you. You can't like be spiritual once in a while. It's like, it has to be something that's a part of you, because like how it was teaching you the lessons of like just being loving, spreading joy, and like how this is what life is worth. Like, ayahuasca just always fucking tells you like what is important in life. This is important. And it can help you with your senses. Like, it'll give you different senses. Mm-hmm. Like, and like the whole array of what senses are is just a spectrum that we have no fucking idea of, like how fucking powerful our minds are.
Right. Yeah.
And like, so like, it's kind of weird. Like, I got like, when the last time I did it, like, curiosity, like that's just a type of sense in you. Like, I'm just very curious, and that makes me a better podcaster, and it helped bring that out of me. And like, you have your own different senses that it helped brought out of you, which is a completely different part of the spectrum. Right, it's just like, you just don't know about it. But all right, man, we went over way more than I thought, but like, this was such a good one. I got to ask you the question of the podcast. Fucking Chris Griffin, God, yay or nay?
Gay, dude.
God's gay. God's gay.
I would say there's a God, there's a spirit. I think we touched on that enough. But yeah, but that would be hilarious if God's just like, yeah, I'm gay. Figure that out, Republicans. And I'm sure God is gay and all the other things there is, because I don't think anyone should worry about how they feel. But yeah, I'm infinitely more not really, because it just reinforced stuff I kind of had a feeling for. I've always felt there's a force in the world and of goodness and good energies and good vibes, and I think there's something out there. I'll also tell my favorite newer story to end the podcast. Like, I remember when you came through Vancouver, and I just started going gray in my beard, and then we got blasted drunk, And then at the end of the night, you were like, buddy, do you dye your beard? And I was like, no, Newer, why would I dye my beard gray? And he's like, oh, it looks sick. I thought you dyed it. And you're kind of disappointed. And I was like, man, why would I do that? He's like, it looks cool though, man. I wish I could do that. And then we saw each other the next day, but it was the end of the night. You were blackout drunk. And we got drunk again. And then at the end of the night, you're like, because I think you'd asked me the day before. And you're like, Griff, do you dye your beard? And I was like, yeah, man. And he was like, oh, I fucking knew it, dude. And you're so happy. And I was like, right on. But now I got a lot of gray. So here we are getting older, but I think we're on the right track, man.
Hey, man. And like both of us have quit drinking at the moment. So and that's I think, our blackout drunk days are kind of behind us. But yeah, man, it's all about growth. It's all about fucking growth, man. It's about finding your place in the world a little bit, making it easier for yourself and others around you, and fucking spreading that love, man. Follow your heart, like you said. Follow your heart.
Follow your heart.
Should I name the episode that? Follow your heart.
Dreams come true, dude.
All right, buddy. Chris, love you, buddy. Thanks a lot for doing this.
Good to hang.
All right, that was another episode. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please like and subscribe to the podcast. Give it a good rating. That always helps. And share it with like-minded people. I really do appreciate that. You can check me out at NewerKidY on Instagram, or check out my website, newerkidy.com. You can see my comedy. You can see my comedy dates that are coming up, and all that other information. We're part of the Comedy Here Often podcast network on 604 Records. But I'll see you next time on another episode of God, Yay or Nay.